I never wanted to deal with ashes. When my father died, I thought burying him would be the hardest part, but somehow it was the part that made sense. Dirt to dirt, stone to stone, it felt final, grounded. But then there was my mother. Her will said she wanted to be cremated, her ashes scattered at the lake where she used to take me fishing when I was a kid. It's strange how grief makes you stupid. You just nod when the funeral director points at forms, you sign things you don't read. They handed me the urn in a matte black box with a cold metal clasp. Take your time, the woman said. I sobbed with rehearsed sympathy. I drove home with the urn seat belted in the passenger side, feeling ridiculous every time I glanced over. It was like Mom was there, silent but judging. When I got home, I set the urn on the coffee table, next to a stack of unopened mail and an empty pizza box from the night before. I told myself I'd scatter her ashes at the lake tomorrow. But tomorrow turned into next week. I'd sit there, eating dinner on the couch, glancing at the urn, telling myself I needed to do it soon. Every day, I felt more guilt. Every day, the urn felt heavier, like the box itself was rooting into the wood grain of the table. It started the fifth night. I woke to a sound, not a crash or a thud, just a soft hiss, like someone exhaling inches from my ear. I sat up so fast I nearly fell out of bed. The room was dark, moonlight spilling through the blinds. I listened. Nothing. Maybe the heat kicking on, I thought. Though I knew that sound well, this was different. The next night, it came again. But this time, it wasn't in my bedroom. It was in the living room. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, and I could swear I heard words. Muffled, broken. Like a distant radio tuned between stations. Hear me. The next morning, I went to the urn. I knelt down, my face inches from the brushed steel. I put my ear to it, feeling like an idiot. Nothing. Of course not. I laughed, but it sounded forced. I decided it was guilt. I'd let her sit here too long. I needed to do what she asked. I loaded the urn back into my car and drove out to Maple Creek Lake. It was just after sunrise, mist crawling off the water, the dock slick with dew. I stood at the edge, unscrewing the top. I half expected something to jump out at me. Maybe it would scream. Instead, I saw the ashes, fine and gray, clinging to the metal edges. I tipped the urn forward. A breeze kicked up, scattering the ashes across the water, into my shoes, into my hair. I whispered goodbye. It felt cheap, but it was all I had. Driving home, I felt lighter, relieved. When I got home, I put the urn back in its box and set it in the hall closet. I'd return it to the funeral home the next day. They told me they recycle them if you don't want to keep them. That night, I slept like a rock. But at 3:14 a.m., I snapped awake. The house was silent, but something felt wrong. I heard it, soft, rhythmic tapping, coming from the closet. I opened the door, and there it was, the urn, exactly where I left it, but the box was open. The lid was unscrewed. A thin film of ash dusted the bottom shelf, trailing out like tiny footprints. I slammed the closet door shut so hard the frame rattled. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out the whisper that came next. But I swear I heard it, a voice, breathy and patient, not yours. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, I called the funeral home. I told them I needed to return the urn. The woman on the line hesitated. Mr. Walsh, are you sure you have the right urn? What the hell do you mean? I asked. There's been a mix-up, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Can you come in today? Please. I sat in the parking lot of Westwood Funeral Services for nearly 20 minutes, the urn in its box on the seat beside me like an uninvited passenger. I kept glancing at it, half expecting the lid to rattle. I told myself it was all in my head, that the ash on the shelf was just me being careless, that the whisper I heard at 3 in the morning was just a bad dream. Inside, the lobby smelled like stale flowers and disinfectant. The receptionist, the same woman who'd handed me the urn in the first place, flinched when she saw me. She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mr. Walsh, please, this way, she said, gesturing down a hall lined with framed photos of weeping angels and sunsets over oceans. In the small conference room, a man in a cheap suit waited. His name tag read Dennis. He stood when I entered, hand outstretched, but he didn't look at my face. His eyes were fixed on the box I carried. I'm so terribly sorry for this, he said, voice dripping with practiced empathy. There's been a situation with our records. May I? He pointed to the box. I set it on the table. Dennis lifted the urn out like it was a live grenade. He turned it, squinting at a tiny brass plaque on the base. This isn't your mother, he said finally. My stomach lurched. What do you mean it's not my mother? I scattered the ashes already. I'm so sorry, Mr. Walsh. The crematorium mislabeled 2 urns. Yours and another family's. You have the remains of a Mr. Harold Green. I tried to laugh. It came out like a cough. Who the hell is Harold Green? He was a local man. Died alone. No next of kin. Well, none that we know of. He was found in his apartment after several weeks. Dennis cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. Again, I can't tell you how sorry we are. We will, of course, arrange for you to have your mother's remains. I scattered them. I snapped. I scattered him. What am I supposed to do now? And why? I stopped, feeling ridiculous for even thinking it. But the words pushed out anyway. Why is he whispering? Dennis's expression twitched. For a moment, something flickered across his eyes. Fear, maybe, or recognition. He recovered fast. I'm sure grief can manifest in all kinds of ways, Mr. Walsh. You're under tremendous stress. He wanted to usher me out then, but I pushed. Who was he really? Harold Green? Why does it feel like he's still here? Dennis finally sat back down. He tapped a pen against the table. Look, off the record. Mr. Green was odd. A recluse. The landlord said he never threw anything away. Hoarder, maybe worse. But the coroner found things. They found bones that didn't belong to him. Small animal bones, arranged in patterns. Weird symbols carved into the walls. Some of our staff were uncomfortable handling his remains. My skin crawled. I remembered the ashes on my shelf, the open urn. The whisper, not yours. So what do? I asked. How do I get rid of him? Dennis gave a tight, brittle smile. You don't need to get rid of anything. Just bring the urn back. We'll dispose of the remains properly. I shook my head. No, he's not in there. I scattered him at the lake. Dennis paused. Then there's nothing to worry about. But I could tell he didn't believe it. Neither did I. That night, I tried to sleep with every light on. I wedged a chair under the closet door handle, like that would stop anything that wasn't flesh and blood. At 2:58 a.m., I heard the hiss again, a faint rasping, like fingernails brushing drywall. I lay frozen, eyes wide, sheets pulled to my chin like a kid afraid of the monster under the bed. The whisper came next, clearer than before, right beside my ear. Come back, bring me back. I shot out of bed, heart hammering. I flicked every light in the house on, pacing the hallway. Then I saw it. A gray trail of ash on the carpet, snaking from my bedroom to the closet door. I yanked the chair away and flung the door open. The urn was on the floor now, out of its box, lid wide open. But it wasn't empty. Not completely. Inside, beneath a smear of fine ash, was something small and sharp. I reached in with trembling fingers and pulled it out. A tooth. Yellow, jagged. Human. I dropped it like it burned me. I stood there, staring at the thing, my mind scraping for any rational explanation. But the only thought that came was that he wanted more. That scattering him wasn't enough. He wanted his pieces back, and I had no idea how many more there were. I didn't sleep for 2 days after I found the tooth. I kept it in a plastic sandwich bag on the kitchen counter, like part of me needed to see it to believe it was real. Every time I walked by, it seemed to move, just a fraction, like it wanted to wriggle free. I tried to tell myself it was stress, that it must have been in the urn the whole time, mixed in with the ashes, a mistake. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Harold Green's pieces didn't want to stay scattered. By the third night, the whispering had grown bolder. It wasn't just a faint hiss anymore. It was voices overlapping, threads of words I couldn't always catch. Sometimes it sounded like my mother's voice, other times like a stranger, guttural and raw. The worst was the scratching. It started behind the walls. Soft at first, like mice. Then louder. A dry, scraping drag that moved from room to room. I'd follow it with my ear pressed to the drywall, convinced I'd see fingers burst through the paint. I finally called someone. Not the police, not the funeral home. A friend of mine, Kyle, who dabbled in ghost hunting back in college. We hadn't talked in years, but when he heard the quiver in my voice, he came over that same night. Kyle showed up with an old duffel bag full of gear, EMF meter, audio recorder, even a handheld thermal camera. He laughed when he set it all up, like we were teenagers again, sneaking into abandoned houses for kicks. But the laughter didn't last long. In the living room, the EMF meter spiked every time he pointed it at the closet door. We both heard it then, a definite, clear whisper. Cold, bring me cold. Kyle went pale. Dude, this is messed up. Spirits don't cling like this unless there's unfinished business. You said you scattered the ashes. Yeah, I said, staring at the urn, which now sat in the middle of the coffee table like it owned the room. But he keeps coming back. Kyle squatted down, peering into the urn. What's that? He reached in and pulled out something else, a shard of bone, no bigger than a matchstick. He held it up to the light. This is human. He's leaving pieces behind. I told Kyle about the tooth, about the trail of ash, about the voice that sometimes sounded like my mother's. He didn't laugh anymore. You need to give him what he wants, Kyle said finally. Maybe he thinks you stole him. You scattered him where he didn't belong. Some spirits are territorial. Then what am I supposed to do? I asked. Dig up the lake? Get the ashes back? Kyle hesitated. Or find out who he was. Maybe there's a reason he's stuck. He didn't have any family, right? Maybe there's something he needs finished. I hated how reasonable it sounded. That night, I dreamed I was back at Maple Creek Lake. I stood knee-deep in the water, fog curling around me like fingers. Something moved beneath the surface, not a fish, not a log. It looked like a man, half-sunk, mouth open in a silent scream. When I reached down, my hands came up coated in ash. I woke up gasping. The clock read 3:33 a.m. Kyle was asleep on the couch, snoring lightly. But someone else was standing in the hallway. A shape, too thin, too tall, its outline flickering like static. I blinked, and it was gone. When the sun came up, Kyle and I drove to Harold Green's old apartment building. The landlord was a squat man named Rudy who smelled like stale cigarettes and cheap coffee. He was more than happy to gossip. Yeah, Harold was a weirdo. Never let nobody in that place, Rudy said, jingling a key ring the size of a grapefruit. Place still empty. Ain't nobody wanna rent it. Smells funny. You sure you want to see it? We did. The apartment was on the top floor. The moment Rudy opened the door, the smell hit me sour, rotten, something old that lingered in the carpet and walls. The windows were covered in black garbage bags duct taped to the frames. Kyle clicked on his flashlight, and we stepped inside. The living room was cluttered with moldering newspapers, yellowed books stacked waist-high, and broken furniture. But the walls were worse. Symbols carved everywhere, circles, spirals, lines that intersected and twisted. Some looked almost runic, others like a child's scribble. Jesus, Kyle muttered. It's like he was trapping something, or calling to it. In the corner, half hidden under a blanket of dust, I found another urn, identical to the one they'd given me. The plaque read Harold Green. I stared at it, then back at Kyle. How many pieces of him are there? I whispered. Kyle didn't answer. He was staring at a symbol on the wall, a spiral with an eye in the center. It seemed to shimmer under the beam of his flashlight. Whatever he was doing, Kyle said, voice low, he didn't finish it. We left Harold Green's apartment with more questions than answers. On the drive back, Kyle kept glancing at me like he was trying to figure out how deep I was already in. I was thinking the same thing. At my place, the urn sat exactly where I'd left it, but the plastic bag with the tooth was gone. In its place, on the kitchen counter, was a thin line of ash leading to the basement door, a door I hadn't opened in weeks. Kyle swore under his breath. Dude, whatever this is, it wants you down there. I wanted to tell him no, to pack my bag and drive to a motel and leave that thing behind. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. Wherever I went, he'd follow. The basement stairs creaked under our weight. The air grew colder the farther we went down, damp and heavy. Kyle swept his flashlight over the concrete floor. That's when we saw it, a circle drawn in black ash. Inside the circle were more symbols, crude spirals and jagged lines that matched what we'd seen in Harold's apartment. And in the center of it all sat the tooth. I stepped closer, feeling the hair on my arms stand up. The whispering started again, louder now, overlapping voices like dozens of people talking just out of earshot. I caught fragments, finish it, and bring me whole. Kyle knelt beside the circle. He was doing rituals down here. Did you ever come down here before? I shook my head. I don't even store anything down here. This wasn't here a week ago. Kyle's eyes met mine. He's using you. You scattered him at the lake. Pieces of him are out there. But the rest, the parts that matter, they're here. He wants you to finish whatever he started. I felt sick. I'm not a damn medium, Kyle. I'm not doing some ritual. Then he'll keep pushing, Kyle snapped. He'll keep whispering. He'll take more. You said he sounded like your mother once. Maybe that's the only way he can reach you. He'll wear you down until you do what he wants. We stood in silence, the basement walls pressing in. Then Kyle pulled something from his bag, a battered old book bound in cracked leather. This is from back in school. Some occult nonsense. There's a ritual in here for severing a spirit's hold. If we're lucky, it'll work. I didn't feel lucky, but I watched him draw a crude version of the symbols around the ash circle, chanting words that sounded like gravel in his throat. The whispering grew louder, angry now, like a swarm of wasps in my ears. When Kyle dropped a lit match into the circle, the ash sparked blue for a heartbeat, then died to gray. The basement fell silent. I wanted to believe it was over. For 2 nights, I actually slept. No whispers, no tapping, no trails of ash. I even found the strength to toss the urn in the garbage bin outside. I told myself it was done. On the 3rd night, a storm rolled in. Rain hammered the windows, wind howled down the chimney. At exactly 3:14 a.m., I woke up with that old, familiar chill, the sense that I wasn't alone. I sat up, straining to hear over the storm. There it was. A hiss. A whisper, clearer than ever. Not enough. Lightning flashed, illuminating the end of my bed. A shape stood there, gaunt, its skin stretched too tight, empty sockets where eyes should be. It opened its mouth, and a cascade of gray ash spilled out, drifting to the floor, swirling like smoke. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. The thing stepped forward, bones clicking under thin skin. Its hand lifted, palm up, and there, resting in its skeletal grasp, was the tooth I'd thought was gone. It dropped the tooth onto my blanket. The shape leaned closer. Its voice was no longer a whisper but a wet rasp right in my ear. Bring me the rest. I don't remember passing out, but I woke at dawn, the storm gone. The tooth lay on my pillow, a smear of ash staining the sheets. I called Kyle. He didn't answer. I drove to his place, pounding on the door until a neighbor poked her head out and told me Kyle had left that morning. No bags, no car. Just walked down the street barefoot in the rain. No one's seen him since. Back at home, I found the urn back in the hall closet. It was clean, polished, lid screwed on tight. But when I picked it up, it rattled. I unscrewed the lid and looked inside. There was more ash than before, and nestled in it was something new. A fingernail, yellowed and cracked. Harold Green wasn't gone. He was rebuilding himself, piece by piece, and I was helping him do it. I don't know how many times I've tried to get rid of the urn since that night. I've driven it out to dumpsters miles away. I've buried it in the woods behind my house. Once, I wrapped it in a contractor bag, weighted it with bricks, and dropped it into Maple Creek Lake, the same lake where I scattered the ashes. It always comes back. Sometimes it waits in the closet, sometimes on my nightstand. Once, it was sitting on the passenger seat of my car when I left for work, strapped in with the seatbelt like some grinning co-pilot. Every time, there's more inside, another piece. A tooth. A sliver of bone. Once, a small, shriveled piece of something soft and gray that I don't want to think about. The whispering never stops now. It's not only at night. It follows me into the shower, hisses through the vent at work, echoes in the rush of wind when I open my car windows. It's always the same message, over and over. Bring me whole. Bring me back. I've started doing research. Who was Harold Green? Why did he die alone, surrounded by symbols and bones? The deeper I dig, the stranger it gets. The town records say he moved here 30 years ago, but before that, there's nothing. No birth certificate, no family. Just a man who arrived one day with a trunk full of old books and a collection of animal bones. The old landlord, Rudy, let me back into the apartment after I begged him. I tore up the carpet, peeled back the wallpaper. The symbols are everywhere, layers upon layers, like he'd been adding to them for years. And hidden behind the wall, in a hollow space above the kitchen sink, I found jars. Glass jars packed with teeth, nails, bits of hair, not just human, but animal too. I don't know how I didn't vomit right there. There was something else in that hollow, something that felt worse than the rest. A small notebook, the pages yellow and brittle. Inside, Harold scrawled handwriting looped over itself in spirals. Some pages are just nonsense, but others, they're instructions. Rituals. A guide to putting himself back together. Not just in spirit, in flesh. The last entry said, find the vessel. Mark the keeper. Over and over. I think I'm the keeper now. I tried to burn the notebook, but the ashes didn't stay gone either. They were back on my pillow the next morning, a smear of soot where my head should have rested. I haven't seen Kyle since he walked barefoot into the rain. But sometimes I dream of him. In the dreams, he's standing at the lake's edge, waist deep in water that boils around him. His mouth moves, but instead of words, I hear the same whisper, "Finish it." Sometimes I see Harold too, at the foot of my bed, behind the shower curtain, reflected in the TV screen when it's off. He's never fully formed. Parts of him flicker like bad reception. Empty sockets for eyes. Ash drifts from his mouth like breath in winter. Last week, I woke up with my own fingernails caked in soot. The urn was open on my chest. I swear it's heavier every day, like he's pulling in every piece I find, or every piece I lose. I tried one more time to go back to the funeral home, to beg them to take it. But the building was closed. Boarded up. A for sale sign hammered into the dead grass out front. No trace of Dennis. No trace of the receptionist. So now I keep the urn close. I don't have a choice. If I put it away, the whispers get worse. Angrier, like claws scraping my skull. But if I listen, if I keep it near, the voice softens, almost like gratitude. I'm writing this because I need someone to know. I don't think I'll be around much longer. At least, not in the way you'd expect. He's almost whole now. I don't know how, but I feel it when I hold the urn. It's warm sometimes. I swear it shudders when I touch it. If you're reading this, and you ever hear a whisper that sounds like your own mother calling you in the dark, don't answer. If they give you an urn, check the plaque twice. And if you find a piece, a tooth, a bone, a piece that doesn't belong to you, do not pick it up. Because once you do, you're part of him. And when he comes knocking, you'll open the door too.